order, and remind members to use their microphones when speaking and to mute all microphones until they are ready to speak to ensure that there is no external interference during discussion. The first item on the agenda.
Sorry, Chair, can you just remind all present that the meeting is being recorded?
Yes, absolutely.
And ask for the recording to begin.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's fine. I don't need to say it then as you said it, Jennifer. Thank you very much. Sorry about that. Okay. The first item is apologies of absence. And can you tell us any apologies?
Yes, Councillor Morrison.
Thank you. Can I ask any elected members who have declarations of interest to make these now, please? None apparent. Okay. Item 3 on the agenda is Civic Government Scotland Act 1982, McDonald's Restaurant, Bowers Walls Place, Barrhead, G781BF, and the applications for late hours catering licence. Welcome, Mr. McLean and your council. Welcome to the meeting of the Licensing Board. My name is Councillor Edlin and I'm the chair of this committee. The other members of the committee are on my right is Provost Montague, Mary Montague, and online on the screens above you is Councillor David MacDonald. On my left immediately is Mr. Mahon, the legal advisor to the council and this board and this committee. On the second on my right is Mrs. Graham Clark to the committee, and she's assisted by Miss Burke and Mr. Burke.
Miss Burns and
Miss Burns and Mr. Burke. Welcome, Miss Burns to the first meeting. Thank you. And on my second on my left is Mr. Kilpatrick, Civic Government Enforcement Officer, and on the far left are two officers from Police Scotland, Chief Inspector Galley and Sergeant Campbell. Okay, this item was continued for a site visit at the meeting of the Licensing Board on the 5th of September. No new information will be considered at this stage, and only the 3 members who attended the site visit who are with us today are able to consider this item. Before I make a proposal, I want to ask you a question, Mr. McLean. Can you tell us how many covers or people, if you would expect through the night from 11 a.m. to whatever time you finish until you open at breakfast time, you would expect, as we've had in our deliberations, we are concerned about the noise level of people being in the restaurant at these hours.
Yeah. In all honesty, it's pretty impossible for me to say because every restaurant's so different. I mean, in the dead of night between 2 and 5, we'll get a handful of people actually in the store, and by a handful I mean anywhere between 5 and 10. And in all honesty, I don't think I've seen any more than 20 people between the hours of midnight and 5 a.m. As far as drive-through is concerned, I really have no idea. I couldn't tell you because it's very much site dependent. I could, however, I could give you an idea based on information I've got from the other stores, which I don't have to hand at the moment, unfortunately, but that's the best information I would have.
So based on the, I mean, obviously this is a guessing an estimation off the top of your head, but you're telling what I understand, and my colleagues can ask you about this. You're saying it's somewhere between 5 and 20.
In the restaurant itself?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to allow my colleagues to question you in more depth about this side of it, if that's all right.
Thank you very much. So, Mr. McLean, we did do a visit to your restaurant, and I observed that the drive-through is far enough away, I would suggest, or what my understanding is, from the immediate neighbours and their homes facing the front of your restaurant. So I could see the aspect of the drive-through would not have a direct impact, visual impact or noise impact. It's traffic and people, I understand, are confined to their cars, so they wouldn't be getting out their cars and going sitting, things like that. So that aspect of it. The other aspect, when we visited it, it is across the road from people's homes, and it occurred to me it was the kind of visual aspect, maybe noise and seeing people gathering, when maybe late at night it's a quiet time when you're in your house and looking out your window, and do you really want to look at that? But I do understand that that's planning, and that the visual aspect, the lighting that you've addressed to accommodate people's concerns, that they felt there was a light nuisance there. So all of that has already been agreed by planning. Turning to the concerns of the residents, it seems to me from the letter that came in, it wasn't that aspect of it. They were concerned about public nuisance. I'm looking at the letter just now, and it said the grant of this, due to the location, the grant would cause undue public nuisance or would be a threat to public order or public safety. Now, before I come back to you on that, can I confirm with the police that they do not have any objections to this? So the police are really not saying there's evidence to suggest that that would be the case. So if we could just hear from the police first of all. Can you confirm that, please?
Yes, I can confirm there's no police objection in relation to this application.
Okay, thank you. Because they have cited in the letter, that's the objectors, other incidents in the Barrhead area of antisocial behaviour evidence, and their concern is that that would transfer via pedestrian customers. So could I ask, how would you deal with if you did get a group of young people gathering there, if they were pedestrian customers? How would you deal with that to mitigate against that being, as they say, a problem with the people whose homes are directly opposite?
There are a couple of things in there. First of all, the shift managers are trained in how to deal with disruptive behaviour. In addition to that, we have a system in all the restaurants. It's called Staff Safe. So it's essentially there's a wristband is worn by one of the managers with a button on it. When that button's pressed, the restaurant CCTV is linked to a central location. Forgive me, I don't know where that central location is. But they also have access to a microphone. So there's a message comes across in the restaurant saying, you're being observed, you're being filmed, we've contacted the police, we'd ask you to leave the restaurant, or words to that effect. As a further precaution, the shift manager will contact the police and report it. But that's really as far as we can take it. We can't physically remove people from the restaurant, and I wouldn't ask my people to do that, but we do everything we can to deter them.
To the police officers, is there any evidence of increased antisocial behaviour in general at night in this area that could be exacerbated by having an open restaurant where people can go and congregate and sit down?
No, not at that location, no.
Thank you. Sorry, Provost.
Thank you very much. Train of thought back again. Yes. So you don't have anybody on site who could remove customers who were maybe causing a nuisance either inside or in the seating area where they're not supposed to be. How do you remove that nuisance? Would you then have to call the police?
We do call the police in exceptional circumstances, and I've done this in a couple of my restaurants. We will employ external security guards if we have a consistent and persistent problem in a restaurant. And they would deal with it very differently from the way we are. And sometimes just the fact of having a security guard in the restaurant is deterrent enough. The other thing is that person can stop people coming into the restaurant if he feels that they might potentially be a risk in the restaurant.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Councillor MacDonald, do you wish to add any questions to Mr McLean or the police?
No, Chair, I have no questions at this time.
Okay. Yeah, of course, yeah, go on.
Again, it's to come back to the people who are living directly opposite, would you consider, if there was a problem going forward, if there does appear to be a problem with, say, youths gathering or consistent antisocial behaviour, would you consider, if this was granted fully, would you consider stopping the pedestrian customers during the night if you found it to be a problem?
I think I tried to make clear at the last meeting about how important it is that I'm a good neighbour. And I think one of the things, I did suggest that potentially a compromise would be not using the internal restaurant, but absolutely if it was granted in full and there was a problem, I would have no issue whatsoever in closing down the restaurant to make sure that doesn't happen in the future. As I said, the compromise was that we would open for drive-through and delivery, and as you rightly said, the drive-through is at the back of the building, the delivery entrance is at the side, and I suspect that the risks of some of the concerns would probably be minimised as a result of going down that route rather than bringing people into the front of the restaurant.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm just going to quietly speak to the Provost. Councillor MacDonald, are you comfortable with this, or do you want to say anything else?
No, I have no further comments.
Okay, just one moment, please. Okay, we have to speak in public. I move to accept or adopt. Provost?
Sorry, could I just interrupt, Chair? I'm assuming you're moving to grant the application in full.
Yes, I move to grant the application in full, subject further to the discussion we've just heard.
Can I just clarify from our legal advisor? Mr McLean has said, should there be a problem, that he would stop, even temporarily, the sit-in arrangement. So I don't know how you couldn't really put that as a condition. We would just have to accept that in good faith, because it would depend on the extent of that. And you could say, well, it wasn't that bad, or the Labour's could say, well, it was that bad. So how could we build this in as an assurance? I mean, I've no doubt of Mr McLean's good faith in this. So I just wondered how we can include that aspect of it. Thanks.
I think it's fair to say, Provost, that you can't build it in per se unless it's a condition of the licence that you grant today. So if you're looking at the suggestion of just restricting it to drive-through and delivery, then you wouldn't grant the application as made. You would grant the application as made subject to those conditions today. That gives you a guarantee that the licence then has to be put into effect with those conditions applicable, and any violation of that then gives rise to the potential to bring the matter back and to revoke the licence for breach. Taking aside the good faith argument in terms of what Mr McLean has already said, the point you make is correct. You are reliant then on Mr McLean making judgments as to the extent of any antisocial behaviour, whether the parameters of any antisocial behaviour have been breached to the point where he feels it appropriate to cease pedestrian footfall into the restaurant. And there is an uncertainty with that from a legal perspective I wouldn't recommend.
Yeah.
I would point out that my thinking on this is that the police have given us assurances that there has been no problems in the past in this area. I am satisfied that Mr McLean is a competent operator in this matter. I also am aware that having an all-night restaurant open serves the community. And in the past I've used such places, as I'm sure many people who have had to work odd hours have done. And it creates economic activity, it creates jobs, and we have to be cognizant of that fact. And unless there is a specific reason to object, then I don't think we should object and stop this enterprise. I am aware of the Provost's concerns, and in some ways I do share them actually. But I think, subject to the vagaries of life in general, I am satisfied that this restaurant is as unlikely to have problems in relation to public order and bad behaviour in the middle of the night as I can be in any circumstances anywhere. And for that reason, that is why I propose to allow this application to be accepted, and that's my proposal. I would like to pass that to my eminent colleague.
I just clarify, thank you, the process here now. Does Councillor Edlin's proposal need a seconder?
Yes. Yes, it does. It would need a seconder.
And in the absence of a seconder, what's the situation as far as process is concerned?
If there's no seconder, then that falls, so you would need to think of another option. You could perhaps propose another option that might be acceptable to Councillor Edlin and Councillor MacDonald.
Right, could I offer, not that I am proposing this, I really just want to clarify the what if scenario. So what if one of our number proposes the drive-through only? Would that then have to be, could you explain this complicated process? I don't think we've ever had this, when there's only 3 councillors and there's possibly three diverging opinions. What's the consequences of this? Could we end up with not making a decision at all if there is not a seconder to any of the 3 options? Could somebody explain that to me, please?
Can I just come in here? I think, Provost, you have to decide if you. I'm assuming that Councillor MacDonald is not going to second my motion. On that assumption, you have to decide if you are prepared to second that, bearing in mind that this is a public hearing and your position and my position and Councillor MacDonald's will be noted by the public. And you have to decide whether you choose to second my proposal or not. If you choose not to second my motion, and the motion cannot proceed, and we then move forward to an alternate motion or no motions. That's where we are, subject to Jerry's confirmation of this. That's the way I see it. So,
Chair,
so you have to decide if somebody has to decide if they're going to second it or not. That is a decision at the moment.
Yes, could I have...
Councillor MacDonald would like to come in.
Right, could I have either Jerry or the
No, hang on.
committee
Before that, Provost, I want to hear Councillor MacDonald because he's been very quiet.
Thanks, Chair. Through you, I just wanted to ask Mr. Mann if he can provide some guidance on this. As far as I'm aware, we are considering an item here on a straightforward case of to either accept or reject the application. So on that basis, I fail to see how we can somehow come to a situation where we have this third option with conditions. The application has been put through, and I feel that we should be considering it on the basis of the information within the application. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, is there an option to have a third option at this stage? I feel that the third option is somehow creating a situation where we're 3-way divergent on this, and I feel that we need to get back onto a straight case of yes or no on the application.
Councillor, the legislation allows the committee to grant any licence subject to conditions, so it's within the discretion of the committee, if it's not satisfied with the licence in its full, or the licence application in its full terms, to impose any conditions it sees fit, which effectively does give the committee discretion to consider a third alternative to grant or refusal.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarification.
Can I just move on from this? We have a proposal by me to accept the application. I am awaiting a decision from my colleagues as to whether one or other of you are going to second that. If that is not accepted, we'll move on to the next part of the process. So, Provost, are you going to second this proposal or not, please?
I'm still trying to decide the best course of action. I am impressed with Mr McLean's stance that should there be a problem, that he would stop the pedestrian custom there.
I think.
So my inclination, as you probably gathered from the last meeting as well, was for only a drive-through. But the way we are set up here with three diverging views, that if there was a scenario, our legal advisor, if the Councillor Edlin's proposal to grant both the sit-in and the drive-through, then if it was not seconded, it would fall. If my amendment for there to be a drive-through was seconded, sorry, can I ask Jerry, the legal advisor, to answer this, please?
Sorry, through the chair. I just want to say, if this motion falls, my understanding is that another motion could then be considered. Is that correct or not?
If I can maybe wrap this all up in one comment. The position is that you have made a motion. If it's not seconded, then for the time being that motion falls. An alternative motion can be put forward by any other member of the committee, and if it's seconded, then it will go to the vote. The committee will generally work on the basis of a majority vote. So if we have 2 votes to 1, that's the decision of the committee. In the event of effectively a three-way tie, where all members of the committee have an alternative view, then it would typically fall to the chair and have as having a second vote to determine the matter.
Okay, so Provost, if you don't mind, I would like your decision on my motion, whether you second it or not. I'll offer Mr. Councillor MacDonald the option of seconding as well, but from his comments already, I would be very surprised if he would wish to second it. So the decision lies with you. And in making that decision, obviously, you, like myself, will be basing your decision on the how should I work out, the credibility and of the applicant.
I wonder whether or not I might just make a very brief observation, if it might assist Ms Montague in her consideration. And it's only to remind that a later's catering licence isn't granted. Apologies. A later's catering licence isn't granted for an indefinite period. It comes up for renew, and so there would need to be a renewal application at the end of, or prior to the expiry of any licence that was granted. And so you've heard from Mr McLean about what he would do in the event that there was any issues, and it may be if there were any issues that were of concern and that Mr McLean didn't act in a way that has been suggested, that might be something that could be considered by any review. So there would be a mechanism within the legislative scheme for any issues which might arise and that aren't handled appropriately to be dealt with. But my submission is Mr McLean is a responsible restaurant owner and would run this restaurant responsibly.
Just ask a follow-up question just on what you've said there. And I'm sorry, I can't remember your name.
It's Scott Flanagan.
Right. Thanks, Mr. Flanagan. So you were explaining to me that this application would be coming up for some review, and what time scale? Say there was, worst case scenario, that was fully granted, as Councillor Edlin has suggested. And we have the sit-in and the drive-through, and there were antisocial behaviour incidents, and I'm not expecting this, Mr McLean, but say they weren't handled, they were allowed to cause problems to the neighbours. So you were explaining to me that within a certain time scale this licence would come up for review. So what would be the time scale for that, for us to look again at that?
Mr Mahon could perhaps assist better with the answer. Different boards will have different periods. I think some will be a year, some will be 3 years. Mr Mahon could perhaps clarify how long licences, later catering licences, would be granted in this area.
What we'll say is, in this area, the initial licence would be granted for a year. So, as a matter of course, it would come back before the committee for consideration at that time. But as I mentioned earlier, if there were incidents in the intervening period, the licensing legislation does allow you to bring matters back to the committee at an earlier stage. So you might not even have to wait that full year to give reconsideration to it in the event that there are circumstances that warrant your consideration.
Okay, thank you. Well, in those circumstances, given the police's input into this and Mr McLean's assurance, that he's going to do everything he can to make sure that is not the antisocial behaviour that the residents living opposite fear. So, and that in a year's time this will be reviewed. So, on that basis, I would second Councillor Edlin's proposal.
Thank you, Provost. I don't propose to make any further comments. I just add that your concerns, which you have eloquently expressed, are shared by me.
Could we ask for Councillor MacDonald's view?
I'm about to do that. Councillor MacDonald, do you wish to say anything before we have a vote?
Members, I thank you for your contributions. I would just say that from my own standpoint, I'm not convinced by that argument. I feel that the representative of the objectors that came before us at the last opportunity presented a very valid case.
Carry on.
Yes, sir. Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. I was just saying I feel that the representative of the objectors made a very valid and good case for the argument to reject the application. I feel that the possibility going forward of consistent antisocial behaviour in this area is, in my view, very founded. I also have issues with how it will affect policing resources within the local area, which are already at breaking point. And I feel that this could potentially impose upon the area in terms of having adequate policing if there are consistent problems at the weekends in particular. So on the basis of that, I am minded to be of the view to reject the application. Thank you, Chair.
Before I call the Provost, I just want to say that in this committee we have two very senior police officers here. The police are very able to express themselves and tell us what the situation is. Now, the police views on their assessment of this, without going back over everything that was said last time, differ from the evidence that was given by the gentleman at the time. And quite frankly, the gentleman was not able to substantiate his evidence in any way whatsoever, whereas the police evidence is based on their statistics and documentation. And I have no reason to doubt the validity in total of the police evidence in this, and probably all the cases we hear, but certainly in this case, I have no doubt about the validity and the statistical information given. And I don't believe that this site of whatever for the restaurant is in a position of vulnerability or increased crime or anything else, because the police have not told us about that. So I'll leave it at that, and I'm going to let the Provost have her say.
Thank you very much. I'm just concerned about phrases or assumptions made that the police service are at breaking point. That's an assumption, and so the police have said, they don't have any concerns, and can I just confirm with the police officers that they don't have a concern that they would not be able to respond to the antisocial behaviour that the neighbours fear. We also have our community safety officers, the ring and report, who can respond to that. But I just want to give you a chance to answer this allegation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, for the question. So, for me, the reason that the police are here today is in relation to an application, and we can only provide the facts in relation to that application. Resourcing is a separate issue in relation to policing, and whilst every public organisation is struggling just now in terms of resourcing, we do our best to ensure that we react to the concerns of the community, and we'll continue to do that.
Thank you very much. I just wouldn't want to have a fear factor, possibly from a comment. Anyway, I've said enough. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Provost, and thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Thank you, Chief Inspector Galley. Okay, I move the application to grant the application. Those in favour, please raise their hands.
I've seconded it, so I make
Two. Those against? Councillor MacDonald has voted against. Provost and myself have voted for. Therefore, the application is granted. Thank you for your patience, Mr. McLean and Mr. Flanagan. Thank you, police officers, for your patience in this very long case, and I wish you well in your enterprise. I think we're just waiting for the next applicant to come in.
Resolution takes.
Oh, actually, it's not
You
here.
need to exclude the press and public.
Okay. Where is this? Right. Sorry, I'm just checking my notes here. Okay. I'd like to propose a resolution to exclude the press and public for the remaining items as on the agenda. Can I have members' agreement to this proposal, please?
Agreed.
I approve.
That's then passed.